She was pregnant at the time. Michael had judged it imprudent to have a baby just then, but she was nearly 30, and thought that if they were going to have one at all, they ought to delay no longer. She was so well established on the stage that she could afford not to appear for a few months. And with the possibility that Michael might be killed at any moment, it was true he said he was safe as a house. He only said that to reassure her, and even generals were killed sometimes. If she was to go on living, she must have a child by him. The baby was expected at the end of the year. She looked forward to Michael's next leave, as she had never done before. She was feeling very well, but she had a great yearning to feel his arms around her. She felt a little lost, a little helpless, and she wanted his protective strength. He came, looking wonderfully handsome in his well-cut uniform, with the red tabs and the crown on his shoulder straps. He had filled out a good deal as the result of the hardships of GHQ, and his skin was tanned. With his close-cropped hair, breezy manner, and military carriage, he looked every inch a soldier. He was in great spirits, not only because he was home for a few days, but because the end of the war was in sight. He meant to get out of the army as quickly as possible. What was the good of having a bit of influence if you didn't use it? So many young men had left the stage, either from patriotism or because life was made intolerable for them by the patriotic who stayed at home. And finally, owing to conscription, that leading parts had been in the hands either of people who were inapt for military service, or those who had been so badly wounded that they had got their discharge. There was a wonderful opening, and Michael saw that if he were available quickly, he could get his choice of parts. When he had recalled himself to the recollection of the public, they could not look about for a theater, and with the reputation Julia had now acquired, it would be safe to start in management. They talked late into the night, and then they went to bed. She cuddled up to him voluptuously, and he put his arms around her. After 3 months of abstinence, he was amorous. "You're the most wonderful little wife," he whispered. He pressed his mouth to hers. She was filled on a sudden with a faint disgust. She had to resist an inclination to push him away. Before, to her passionate nostrils, his body, his young, beautiful body, had seemed to have a perfume of flowers and honey, and this had been one of the things that had most enchanted her to him. But now, in some strange way, it had left him. She realized that he no longer smelt like a youth. He smelt like a man. She felt a little sick. She could not respond to his ardor. She was eager that he should get his desire satisfied quickly, turn over on his side, and go to sleep. For long she lay awake. She was dismayed. Her heart sank because she knew she had lost something that was infinitely precious to her, and pitying herself, she was inclined to cry. But at the same time she was filled with a sense of triumph. It seemed a revenge that she enjoyed for the unhappiness he had caused her. She was free of the bondage in which her senses had held her to him, and she exulted. Now she could deal with him on equal terms. She stretched her legs out in bed, and sighed with relief. By God, it's grand to be one's own mistress. They had breakfast in their room, Julia in bed and Michael seated at a little table by her side. She looked at him while he read the paper. Was it possible that 3 months had made so much difference in him? Or was it merely that for years she had still seen him with the eyes that had seen him when he came on the stage to rehearse at Middlepool in the glorious beauty of his youth, and she had been stricken as with a mortal sickness? He was wonderfully handsome still. After all, he was only 36. But he was not a boy anymore. With his close-cropped hair and weather-beaten skin, little lines beginning to mark the smoothness of his forehead and to show under his eyes, he was definitely a man. He had lost his coltish grace, and his movements were set. Each difference was very small, but taken all together they amounted, in her shrewd, calculating eyes, to all the difference in the world. He was a middle-aged man. They still lived in the small flat they had taken when they first came to London. Though Julia had been for some time earning a good income, it had not seemed worth while to move while Michael was on active service. But now that a baby was coming, the flat was obviously too small. Julia had found a house in Regent's Park that she liked very much. She wanted to be settled down in good time for her confinement. The house faced the gardens. Above the drawing-room floor were 2 bedrooms, and above these 2 rooms that could be made into a day and a night nursery. Michael was pleased with everything. Even the price seemed to him reasonable. Julia had, during the last 4 years, been earning so much more money than he that she had offered to furnish the house herself. They stood in one of the bedrooms. "I can make do with a good deal of what we've got from my bedroom," she said. "I'll get you a nice suite at Maples." "I wouldn't go to much expense," he smiled. "I don't suppose I shall use it much, you know." He liked to share a bed with her. Though not passionate, he was affectionate, and he had an animal desire to feel her body against his. For long, it had been her greatest comfort. The thought now filled her with irritation. "Oh, I don't think there should be any more nonsense till after the baby's born. Until all that's over and done with, I'm going to make you sleep by yourself." "I hadn't thought of that." "If you think it's better for the kid."